as being very important for the future of civilization.
All the biggest stories from across the country on the Friday News Roundup. Next time on 1A.
Good morning. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Marianne Zalesnik. Ohio's ongoing saga over redrawing state legislative district lines has been grinding on for 2 years. The Republican majority on the Ohio Redistricting Commission has known for the past 16 months it would have to meet again to come up with new maps, having made several attempts last year, all of which the Ohio Supreme Court struck down as unconstitutional. They finally called a meeting for this past Wednesday, but that fell apart before they could get to any business when the 5 Republicans on the 7-member commission couldn't agree on which of them would serve as co-chairs. WVXU senior political analyst Howard Wilkinson has covered the story from the beginning. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning.
So you say in your latest column at WVXU.org, the Republican Commission members are clearly gaming the system and want to push through a set of maps with little opportunity for input from the public and no role for the Democratic minority on the commission. Can you explain?
Yes, Marianne. The Republicans on the commission knew last year they were never going to plan through the Ohio Supreme Court because then Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, a Republican, consistently voted with the 3 Democrats on the court to declare the GOP plans unconstitutional 5 times. But they also knew that O'Connor, who became something of a pariah in the Republican Party, couldn't run for re-election last year because of Ohio's age limit for judicial candidates. So they were hoping one of the other justices, Sharon Kennedy of Butler County, would be elected Chief Justice, which is exactly what happened last fall. Then Joe Dieters, the former Hamilton County prosecutor, was appointed to Kennedy's Associate Justice seat. That gives the GOP a clear path to railroad new maps through a short period of time with little public input and have the assurance of the Supreme Court without O'Connor that will rubber stamp pretty much whatever they do.
So Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who's a Republican member of the commission, has set a deadline of September 22nd for the work to be finished. Why so soon?
He says it needs to be done so election officials have district lines in place and they can be ready for a 2024 primary election filing deadline for candidates that's going to come up on December 20th of this year. But that begs a question that neither LaRose or any of the Republicans on the commission have answered. Why did you waste 16 months without holding a meeting to come up with new maps? The only reasonable explanation that I can see is that they want a quick process and they end up producing maps that are either the same as the ones found unconstitutional last year or only slightly different.
Now, if that's what's happening, what can the voting rights group who opposed the plans in the Ohio Supreme Court do about it in the future?
Well, actually, they're already doing it. A coalition of voting rights groups are preparing to mount a petition initiative campaign to replace the current system, which was approved by voters in 2015, with a new system be written into the state constitution. They're hoping to get it on the ballot in 2024. It would take elected officials completely out of the process of drawing legislative district lines. It would create a 15-member commission of Republican, Democrats, and Independents, and the only job requirement for that commission would be that these folks will not be elected officials. They take evidence from the public, from the political parties, from academics, other interested parties, and then approve a set of maps. It's very much like the system Michigan adopted in 2021, which resulted in a complete red to blue transformation of the legislature last year. I think that the more Ohio Republicans try to game the current system, more likely it is that voters will get fed up and end up taking elected officials out of the process altogether.
Howard, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Howard Wilkinson is WVXU's senior political analyst. You can read his column on this subject at WVXU.org.
Support comes from Rock Island Realty, a locally owned remodeling company. Whether it's a porch, deck, bathroom, kitchen, addition, or a whole home remodel, Rock Island Realty specializes in adding modern amenities while preserving your home's original character. More at rockislandrealty.com, bringing great people and great homes together.
Next time on Reveal. Friends say police pulled over Billy Joe Johnson dozens of times before he died.
We may have been stopped maybe 6 times in a month's time.
One officer's name kept coming up, someone the lead investigator never spoke to.
Nobody gave me that name. If they had gave me that name, I guarantee I would have interviewed him and had him in there.
On the next Reveal.
Sunday nights at 9 and Friday evenings at 7 on 91.7 WVXU.
Support comes from Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, presenting Sanctuary City. 2 young immigrants see each other through adolescence and fight to find their place in the world in this unconventional love story. September 16th to October 22nd. Sponsored by DG and Mike Schuler. Tickets at cincyplay.com.
It's 8:50. This is 91.7 WVXU. Coming up in 10 minutes on the BBC News Hour. Still, the death toll soars. Libya's natural and human disaster. Also, China's missing defense minister, a year of women leading protests in Iran, and another Alzheimer's breakthrough. Those stories starting in 10 minutes on the BBC News Hour. 9 first morning weather. Sunny and pleasant today. The high temperature 78. Mostly clear, cool tonight, the low 52. And tomorrow, mostly sunny to partly cloudy. Some possible showers in the evening tomorrow, the high 80. Then on Sunday, expect a little bit more rain. It's 54 degrees in Cincinnati.
I'm Lucy May. On the next Cincinnati edition, the names of dozens of Ohioans appeared on pro-fracking letters without their knowledge. Now the AG is investigating. We'll talk to the reporter who wrote the story. Plus, the Ohio Redistricting Commission has just days to submit new maps, but infighting stalled the first meeting. The weekly news review, today at noon on Cincinnati Edition on 91.7 WVXU.
Union car and truck workers walk off the job at 3 plants as contract negotiations continue.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, helping provide a smarter, easier way to get the supplies businesses need to thrive. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying. And by Affinity, helping investors navigate the relationship economy with the CRM built for private capital markets. Affinity.co/marketplace.
I'm David Brancaccio. Members of the United Auto Workers Union started a limited strike last night against GM, Ford, and Stellantis. It's the first time unionized auto workers have walked off the job at all 3 companies at once, reflecting the high stakes. Automakers say they're in a fight for survival as the industry electrifies. Workers want to reverse wage and benefit concessions at a time the labor market is strong. Marketplace's Nova Safo reports.
Less than 10% of UAW members walked off the job last night, but Union President Sean Fain said the strike could spread.
This is our generation's defining moment. The money is there, the cause is righteous, the world is watching, and the UAW is ready to stand up.
The union wants pay increases of 36% over 4 years, and it wants to reverse concessions over pensions and pay made during the Great Recession. In the first half of this year, the Detroit Three made a combined $21 billion in profits, but automakers say the workers' demands are unaffordable because they must invest in electrification. Here's GM CEO Mary Barra in a company video.
If we don't continue to invest, we will lose ground, and it will happen fast. Our competition across the country and around the world, most of whom are non-union, will waste no time seizing the opportunity we've handed them.
The previous UAW strike in 2019 against GM lasted 40 days. This time around, the strategy of targeting a limited number of plants could help stretch out the union's strike fund for a longer battle. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
That strike fund would last 11 weeks, 77 days if all members went on strike. But again, they're striking at just 3 facilities for now: Wayne, Michigan, Wentzville, Missouri, and Toledo, Ohio. The union wants the car companies to return to pensions for retirees that offer set amounts per month rather than the invest-it-yourself 401k plans available to those hired since 2007. The California State University system, the country's largest public university system, will be raising its tuition by 6% a year for 5 straight years starting in the fall of next year. CSU's not alone. SU's not alone. West Virginia University and Rutgers in New Jersey are among those raising tuition significantly. Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes reports.
Cal State points out it's only raised tuition once in the past 12 years, and even public universities have to deal with inflation. Robert Kelchin researches higher ed finance as a professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
Faculty and staff are expecting pay raises. Utilities have gone up. Health insurance benefits have gone up. All the operating costs have gone up.
Kelchin says in many states, the legislatures aren't interested in giving any more funding to university systems, and so
the importance of tuition has gotten bigger and bigger. And in about half the states, public colleges are getting more money from tuition than from the state.
Public schools also have many fixed costs, but you're potential customers. Kevin Carey is with New America.
The phrase that people in higher education use is the enrollment cliff.
Cal State University says for a majority of its students, the tuition increase will be covered by grants and scholarships. Still, Carey says, ultimately tuition increases affect students at the margin most of all. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
Markets, Dow futures are up 0.1%, S&P futures are little changed, NASDAQ futures are down 0.2%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3AI. C3 Generative AI provides ChatGPT enterprise search that is verifiable, secure, and accurate across all enterprise data. Learn more at c3.ai. This is Enterprise AI. And by UKG, an HR payroll and workforce management solution designed to help make a fairy tale workplace a reality. UKG, our purpose is people.
Some startups using venture capital money to disrupt the health insurance business have run into serious trouble, which is also trouble for their customers. Colorado Public Radio's Andrew Kenny reports.
Lauren Gibbs always wanted to work for herself. She's a real estate agent in Lakewood, Colorado.
Being my own boss was just going to make more sense.
To do that, she had to buy her own health insurance. And in 2020, she was excited to sign on with a new startup company called Bright Healthcare.
I was like, this seems like a pretty good deal, and I think that the health insurance industry is needs some disruptors and some innovation.
But it didn't last. Last December, Bright Healthcare's startup model was failing, and it was pulling out of the individual health insurance market across the country. That affected nearly 1 million people with Bright Insurance, including Gibbs, who had to scramble for a new plan. Her next provider was another startup called Friday Health Plans. Turns out it was also in deep financial trouble. State regulators shut down that company in August. Some customers had to start all over on their deductibles. Gibbs estimates she'll be out close to $3,000.
The reason we have insurance is so we don't have an unexpected expense, like $3,000.
Together, Friday Health and Bright Healthcare had collected more than $3 billion in investor funding. So what happened?
They didn't understand health insurance. Health insurance is really complicated.
Health insurance consultant Ari Gottlieb says the math didn't pencil out for these startups. Sure, their premiums were low, but that meant these companies weren't taking in enough revenue to cover the healthcare expenses they were on the hook for.
But because they started to lose money in a number of different markets, they started to set off some alarm bells for us.
That's Colorado Insurance Commissioner Michael Conway. He says company leaders weren't giving state regulators the full financial picture.
In the case of Friday, they made very, very bad decisions at the management level, at the C-suite level, for years that ultimately ended up leading to their failure.
He says state regulators did everything they could. Both Friday and Bright Healthcare are now largely out of the insurance business nationwide. Neither company responded to requests for comment. But that's not much comfort to customers like Lauren Gibbs.
Having these two collapses in a row in Colorado, the state regulators, the governor, they need to pay attention to this and understand these are real people's lives and health on the line.
Gibbs is begrudgingly going back to a much larger health insurer. She hopes this one will stay in business. In Colorado, I'm Andrew Kenny for Marketplace.
And we are from APM, American Public Media.
It's a minute before 9. Good morning. This is 91.7 WVXU. Sunny, pleasant today. The high 78. It's 55 now.
Support comes from the Give Them 10 movement and Scooter, the neutered cat, here to answer any question about cats by calling Scooter's Help Center at 1-833-GIVE-10. A cat specialist can give you advice on spaying and neutering, adoption, fostering, cat behaviors, and more. That's 1-833-GIVE-10. Support comes from Ohio Living Land Fair. You can join Ohio Living Land Fair for an in-person tour of the 1- and 2-bedroom independent living apartment homes. Your opportunity to say goodbye to yard work, cleaning, cooking, and home maintenance. You can discover more online at ohioliving.org. That's ohioliving.org.
91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUP Oxford. News for Cincinnati Public Radio and NPR.
Welcome to NewsHour. It's live from the BBC World Service in London. I'm Tim Franks. At least 11,000 already dead. And now, after the Libyan dam burst, a race to prevent another disaster.
The biggest concern now is the contaminated water. We don't want people to drink any water because water supply in the city here, they were dependent on wells. Now most of these be damaged or contaminated.
Also, Iran massively increases security ahead of the anniversary of Mahsa Amini's death. We'll hear from the women refusing to be cowed.
I dress however I like now. Even though I feel scared to my bones, whenever I pass a mounted police, I keep my head high and I pretend that nothing is happening.
And the scientist who unlocked the mystery of the self-destructing brain cells in people with Alzheimer's. All that after the news.
Hello, this is Julie Candler with the BBC News. The UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths says the pressing needs in Libya are shelter, food and primary medical care. The UN estimates that almost 900,000 people need assistance. Nina Sinjar is monitoring events from Beirut.
The number of deaths is on the rise. Local rescue teams continue to retrieve thousands of bodies that were washed out to sea. Thousands more people are still missing, many thought to be buried under rubble. There are concerns of disease spreading. Conditions on the ground for rescue teams are extremely difficult as the city streets are covered with mud and debris. Ships arriving with aid have found it difficult to offload. Local authorities and the internationally recognized government in Tripoli called for investigation into why 2 dams collapsed, causing so many deaths, and why residents received insufficient warning.
The authorities in Iran are further tightening security on the eve of the first anniversary of the death of the Kurdish Iranian woman Mahsa Amini. People in her hometown of Saqqez have told the BBC that it feels as if it is under martial law. Here's Caroline Hawley.
The Iranian authorities are absolutely determined to prevent any further unrest breaking out to mark the anniversary of Mahsa Amini's death. So we've seen a wave of preemptive arrests of women's rights activists, of journalists, of singers, of relatives of people killed, and many hundreds were killed in the protests. Even there's a report that Mahsa Amini's own father was interrogated earlier this week for an hour and then released. But women have been defying the regime on a daily basis, women and men who want freedom, and they extraordinarily seem to have hope still that they will slowly but surely make changes.
The European Union has fined the social media app TikTok the equivalent of almost 370 million.
With the local authorities and working closely with the community, we will be able to reach the affected communities.
When you were touring,
And the Young and the Restless declined to comment for the story, and Television City didn't respond to requests for comment. The day after Sarah ID'd the neutral gate abuser, Bill and the writers began to picket there.
Flipping this gate probably won't be the thing that gets the studios back to the table, but even if it moves the needle just a smidge, then it's a victory.
Most of the writers picketing in Hollywood don't have a seat at the negotiating table. They have are picketing signs. And now, one more place where they can use them. Dave Blanchard, NPR News.
Support for Planet Money comes from Bank of America, offering access to resources and digital tools designed to help local to global companies make moves for their businesses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/bankingforbusiness.
This is NPR News.
Rotten Tomatoes has been a go-to source for movie reviews for years, and its ratings can make or break a film's success. But some say the site has major flaws in that system.
A mediocre movie can do really well on Rotten Tomatoes, and a movie that is great but a little challenging might lose points because it's not a total across-the-board crowd pleaser.
More on the Rotten Tomatoes effect on All Things Considered from NPR News. Tomorrow at 5 on 91.7 WVXU.
Support comes from Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, presenting Sanctuary City. Two young immigrants see each other through adolescence and fight to find their place in the world in this unconventional love story. September 16th to October 22nd. Sponsored by DG and Mike Schuler. Tickets at cincyplay.com.
Eastbound 275 after Kellogg, there's a wreck blocking the left lane. Northbound 75 before the Warren-Montgomery County line, there's a wreck blocking the right lane there. Also Montgomery Road and Deer Wester Drive, there's a wreck.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Elsa Chang. In the past, impeachment probes have dealt with something a president did while he held that office.
Not so this latest one.
It's a much harder challenge to convince members of Congress that it's appropriate and useful to impeach an officer based on conduct that occurred prior to their holding office.
Now News.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. America's unionized auto workers are staging an unprecedented strike at all three major automakers, seeking higher wages in an era of big profits as the industry makes a costly switch from gasoline guzzlers to electric vehicles. By striking simultaneously at GM, Ford, and Stellantis, formerly known as Chrysler, the workers are seeking a 36% pay raise over 4 years. Ryder Littlejohn is a longtime worker at the Ford plant in Buffalo. He says workers aren't being greedy, just asking for what they lost during the downturn in 2007.
My family sees the economy. My family have worked for low wages or work for low wages. So our fight is also their fight. They understand that if we continue to just grow the top 1%, eventually there'll be nothing left for anybody.
The strikes are limited right now to 3 assembly plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri. The UAW president says more plants will be added if the companies don't deliver better contracts. President Biden has authorized FEMA assistance to be available in Maine ahead of Hurricane Lee's landfall tomorrow. From Maine Public Radio, Nick Song has the latest on the storm's potential impact.
The National Hurricane Center shows Lee making landfall on the western edge of Nova Scotia Saturday afternoon, with parts of Maine's coast being whipped by tropical storm-force winds as soon as late Friday. Cape Cod and other parts of Massachusetts are also under threat, plus areas more inland. Louise Fody, a warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Caribou, Maine, says heavy rains should be of concern.
If you are in a location that gets isolated during heavy rainfall, like a road gets washed out or something, that may happen. Turn around, don't drown, don't drive through floodwaters.
She says those living near coastal areas of the upper northeast should also prepare for power outages caused by fallen trees.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. It's 5:33 and 76 degrees in Cincinnati. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Bill Reinhardt. Northbound 75 is now closed just before Mitchell because of an incident. Vehicles aren't being allowed to get off of 75 at Mitchell.
Cincinnati Planning Commission today approved pivotal changes to FC Cincinnati's plans for a mixed-use district north of TQL Stadium. Those included a sale of the city-owned alleys and streets, as well as zoning and other changes. FC Cincinnati Chief Development Officer Chad Munin says diversity is a big goal for the coming construction.
The goal really on the contractors is to make sure that they're prepared and that the general contractor at Messer and Traversy is prepared to be purposeful of how we break up the bid packages to give the largest opportunity for small and minority and women-owned businesses to participate in the project.
FC Cincinnati's plans call for an 18 to 23-story hotel, similarly scaled apartment tower, an entertainment venue, and other amenities. You can read more and see some plans at wvxu.org. Opponents of abortion who believe the procedures should be outlawed in all cases and the women who get them should be prosecuted for murder are taking issue with major anti-abortion groups for not doing enough to end abortion. State House correspondent Joe Ingles reports.
Lizzie Marbach was fired as communications director for Ohio Right to Life in August. At a State House rally for the group End Abortion Ohio, Marbach said Ohio Right to Life and other anti-abortion groups and lawmakers were ready to enact further restrictions until February 21st, when abortion rights groups announced plans to put an amendment before voters this fall.
It was at that moment that Ohio Right to Life's president, Mike Ganadakis, and the entire pro-life lobby in Ohio made the unanimous decision to halt all pro-life legislation and dial back rhetoric against abortion until after November 2023.
Ganadakis says he wasn't at the rally, wasn't aware Marbach was speaking, and has no comment because he's not involved with the End Abortion Ohio group. Ganadakis said he's focused on the November election. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
Mostly clear and cool tonight, a low of 52. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy tomorrow, a high of 80 with some showers moving in for Saturday evening and night. It's 76 degrees.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Bank of America, offering access to resources and digital tools designed to help local to global companies make moves for their businesses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/bankingforbusiness. From Procter & Gamble, maker of Align Probiotic, a daily supplement designed by gastroenterologists to help relieve occasional bloating, gas, and abdominal discomfort. More at alignprobiotics.com. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly in Washington, where Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy made it official this week. House Republicans launched an impeachment inquiry of President Biden. But how they'll do it, when they'll do it, and most importantly, what the charges are, these things are all still up in the air. Well, we can state the obvious. This is not the first time in recent history that Congress has pursued impeachment of a president. So, how might this time be different, either in substance or in process? Let's talk it through with NPR political correspondent Susan Davis and senior White House correspondent Tamara Keith. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to let you each weigh in on what you see as the same or different from impeachments past. Sue, kick us off.
Deadline, but Todd Turner is optimistic one will be reached.
A couple weeks, it could take a couple months, but I do think that they will come to an agreement. It's a commitment that our national negotiating is to get an agreement where they have the full support of UAW Local 863. They're working diligently towards an agreement that we all deserve.
Right now, only 3 plants across the country are on strike. One of them is in Toledo. Turner says his Ford Sharonville plant is ready to walk out if the UAW gives them the signal. Construction company CEO Randy Maxwell is Indiana's newest state senator. Maxwell was chosen by a private Republican caucus this week to replace Chip Perfect, who announced his resignation last month. Maxwell is the owner and founder of Maxwell Construction in Guilford. He's set to serve out the remaining 3 years of Perfect's 4-year term. Since the end of the 2023 legislative session in April, 4 state lawmakers have announced their resignations from the Indiana General Assembly. A website that the state of Ohio has used to document data on COVID since the beginning of the pandemic is moving. State House correspondent Joe Ingles reports.
The COVID database has been housed on a special website dedicated to data about the virus, but the Ohio Department of Health says all of the statistics and weekly reports will be moving to the Ohio Department of Health's website. In the future, visitors who go to coronavirus.ohio.org will be redirected to the Health Department's website. A similar transition took place back in 2011 when the state's special website tracking the H1N1 flu virus was merged onto the Department of Health's website. The Health Department says COVID updates will continue to be monitored and posted once the information has been moved over. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
52 tonight, 80 tomorrow. It's 75 degrees now.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly in Washington.
And I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. The United Auto Workers are rallying in Detroit today to mark the start of historic and unusual strikes. The union is striking against all three major automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, but only at one plant per company. Right now, thousands of workers are striking, which is less than 10% of all unionized workers at the big three, but that number could grow. NPR's Camila Dominowski joins us now from the rally site. Hey, Camila.
Hi, Elsa.
So I know that you've been out on the picket lines today meeting with a lot of workers. What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, a lot of people have talked about the sense that they are making history, right? The first time the UAW has struck all three of these companies at the same time. That brings with it some excitement, but also, it's a strike. There's fear. There are concerns about the economic toll it takes on a family to not have income for a while. And, I should note, really broad consensus among workers out on the picket lines that the companies can afford to make better offers than they're making now. But, one other thing that struck me when I was talking to people today is that while nationally I think there's been a lot of focus on the wage demands in these talks, things like cost of living, which are really important in these talks, to be clear, a lot of the workers who I spoke with who are striking themselves, they focused more on things that have not been so much in the national headlines.
Oh, interesting. Things like what?
Things like how long it takes for a new worker to reach maximum pay levels, and things like retirement health care benefits. I met one worker named Eric Mullins. Here's one thing that he said to me.
They need to give some guys like me health care after we retire. I'm third generation. My grandfather started here, and I couldn't tell you when. And my dad's been here since '95. So he's got almost 30 years in here. And his insurance is far greater than mine.
And is he retired?
Nope, still here.
But when he retires, what's he gonna get?
Oh, he'll still have insurance. Absolutely, he'll still get everything. He'll get a pension, all his benefits. We get nothing. So that's the kind of stuff that's got to end.
Wow. So that worker's looking back at what the union used to give to people like his dad, and that's what he wants for his generation too. How realistic is that, Camila?
Well, that question that you just asked is really at the heart of these strikes, right? Because the union is saying, under new leadership, Sean Bain, he's saying we can ask for more than we thought we could under previous leaders. They're trying to get back things that they gave up before, especially things that they gave up in 2007 and 2009 in order to help the automakers through what was really a financial crisis. And from the workers' perspective, they're saying, it worked. You're doing great now. Your profits are huge. Everybody mentioned the size of company profits to me. And now it's your turn to give that back to us. Okay, your side of the deal. On the other side of the table, sources at automakers have told me that retirement health care, specifically that benefit that Mullins was talking about, that is a non-starter for them because of that same history. They look back, they say that a big part of what pushed two of the big three into bankruptcy was their financial obligations to retirees, and they don't want to go back to that. So both sides are looking at this history, and it's taking them in completely opposite directions, which is why we now have this strike situation.
So interesting. Okay, well, what's next after this rally?
Hard act to follow. The crowd loved Bernie Sanders' speech. We're right across the street from a black tie event at the Detroit Auto Show. There's going to be negotiations are going to resume between the automakers and the union, and we'll see what happens.
That is NPR's Camila Dominowski in Detroit. Thank you so much, Camila.
Thank you.
The governor of Maine has declared a state of emergency as Hurricane Lee approaches the state. Much of Maine is under a tropical storm warning, and Lee is expected to bring high seas, heavy rain, and strong winds. We're joined now by Maine public reporter Caitlin Bedian, who is in Bar Harbor. Hey there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are things looking in Bar Harbor today?
Well, strangely enough, it has been a beautiful day here in Bar Harbor. The sun has been out for most of the day with clear skies, but it has been unusually quiet for the town. To compare, when I was here in June, I came in on a cold and rainy Monday morning, and the town was still packed. So to see it this empty on such a nice day really speaks to the storm and the concerns about that. You know, there are cruise ships that were supposed to dock here this weekend that canceled. Looking out at the water, you can see that a lot of people have taken their boats out of the water. And even the few tourists that are here, I spoke with some folks at the visitor center in town who said that people have come there with concerns about if there will be flooding or impacts from the storm.
Well, and I know from friends who live in Maine and who have complained all summer that there's been a lot of rainy and cold days in Maine this year. Is that adding to concerns about possible flooding this weekend?
Definitely. There have been several storms over the summer that caused flooding in different parts of Maine, and that has really resulted in very saturated ground that can't take a lot more water. Here in Bar Harbor, though, they're more concerned about the wind. The concern is that with the combination of the saturated ground and the high winds from the storm, it will make it a lot easier to knock trees over and then in turn knock down power lines. The fire chief here in Bar Harbor said there's only a few areas that are likely to flood, so he's really focused on the trees.
So what's the official guidance? What are people being told to do to prepare?
Much of it is the same advice that has been given for other storms, you know, to stay inside and prepare for power outages. Utilities here in Maine have been preparing with extra crews to respond to outages, and the fire chief here in Bar Harbor spoke to coordinating with his staff and creating checklists for each day, mostly telling people to really stay away from downed power lines and trees and to just be patient while officials work to respond to all the damage.
While they clean up from whatever is coming. Real quick before I let you go, I want to ask about one other place because I know you're near Acadia National Park. What do preparations there look like?
Yeah, so the park has gone ahead and closed campgrounds to make sure that nobody is staying out overnight with the storm coming in, and then certain areas where it's lower elevation, where there are concerns about flooding, have been closed as well. But like everybody else, they're kind of waiting to assess the damage afterwards.
That is Maine Public's Caitlin Bedian reporting today from Bar Harbor. Thanks so much.
Thanks again for having me.
It's not just physical obstacles that are getting in the way of help to earthquake survivors in Morocco. The Moroccan government has been criticized for mishandling the response, but Moroccans in the quake zone insist that they stand behind their king. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports.
There are traffic jams on the tiny roads high in the Atlas Mountains as rescue teams, aid trucks, and cars full of journalists try to squeeze by each other on hairpin curves. Dutch rescue volunteer Saad Attia says their sniffer dogs are trained to find survivors, so every minute counts.
When we arrived on Sunday, I thought we can reach the government, but the government was not really welcoming us. They say, yeah, you should get approval from the embassy, or you go to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yeah, so that means just go away. We don't know.
So they joined other volunteer rescue teams, but he says they lost a day. The Moroccan government has approved aid from only 4 countries, despite many more offers of help. Unlike in Turkey's recent quake, where Attia also worked, there have been next to no survivors pulled from the rubble in Morocco. To be fair, that's also largely due to the traditional adobe houses in Berber villages. The mud brick insulates well from cold and heat, says Murad Sassani, a professor of structural engineering at Northeastern University, but it collapses easily in quakes.
When it crushes, it becomes like powder and soil would fill everywhere,
leaving no shelter spaces or air pockets, he says. When you arrive at a destroyed village, it mostly looks like a giant heap of rocks and earth.
Mission impossible to find life.
Despite the overwhelming needs, on Thursday, the German Red Cross said it was forced to cancel a plane of humanitarian aid due to an abrupt change in Moroccan regulations. And French offers of help were ignored from the beginning. Morocco's king, Mohammed VI, is said to have frosty relations with President Emmanuel Macron. Whether real or imagined, the incident created diplomatic tensions that Macron tried to calm in a video to the Moroccan people this week. I want to tell Moroccans directly that France was devastated by this terrible earthquake, he said. We are ready to provide humanitarian aid, but we await your green light. The message completely backfired, infuriating Moroccans. The country's powerful and frequently absent king was reportedly in his multi-million-dollar Paris apartment when the quake struck. He returned to Morocco later the next day. Former Moroccan journalist Aboubakar Jamai now teaches international relations in France. He says reaction to the earthquake is proof that Morocco is not a democracy under King Mohammed VI.
And he remained out of the country for 19 hours, and during these 19 hours, it's as if Morocco didn't have a government, and worse, didn't have almost a state, because there was no communication between any official with the rest of the population. World leaders expressed their condolences, their support to Morocco, and not one Moroccan politician voiced anything, something, toward the Moroccans.
Media here is restricted, and it's hard to find Moroccans ready to criticize their monarch, but most seem sincere in their support. Mountain villagers amid the destruction even yelled out to us, "Long live the king." In a town at the base of the Atlas Mountains, men are unloading trucks coming from around the country filled with mattresses, tents, and blankets for the remote villages. On every truck is a picture of the Moroccan king. 23-year-old volunteer Amin Zairi bristles at criticism of his government's response to the disaster. We don't need help from any other country, especially not France, he says, adding, "Long live the king." Eleanor Beersley, NPR News, Aziz, Morocco.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Cincinnati Ballet presents More Room to Play. Kaplan New Works at the Aronoff Center's Jarson Kaplan Theater, September 15th through 24th. Experience 5 contemporary ballets, including 3 world premieres. One from New York City Ballet principal dancer Tyler Peck. Learn more at cballet.org. Kaplan New Works, September 15th through 24th at the Aronoff Center.
I'm fascinated by technology, but what's really fascinating is talking to the people behind these incredible advancements. This is Ann Thompson, and I bring you my Focus on Technology report every Monday, as well as keep you updated as your midday host on 91.7 WVXU and streaming on WVXU.org.
Support comes from Central Bank. Since 1946, Central Bank remains a community bank dedicated to serving consumers and businesses through 24-hour online, mobile, and phone banking services and 4 locations in Crestview Hills, Florence, Fort Mitchell, and Union. Learn more at centralbank.com.